With the help of Hashem, we are learning Chagiga Daf Chav Beis. Chavre, we began the new Pedic, the third Pedic on Daf Chav Amid Beis, and the Mishnah gave 11 stringencies, Chomer, or sometimes we will call them in the singular Ma'ala, Maila, or in the plural Mailois, higher standards that we have regarding Kachim, even over Truma. The first one the Mishnah gave is concerning whether one is allowed to toivel, to immerse one keli inside another. Obviously, if the two kelim are adhering to each other, then even for chulin, it's not going to be a valid tefillah because you have a bona fide chatzitza. We're speaking about the inner keli is floating very comfortably, very loosely, not interfering with the waters touching all of the surface of either the outer and the inner vessel. Nevertheless, the Chachamim felt that they made a gzeira, they made a takana, that when it comes to any immersion for kachim, one may not do so. One may not do so. For truma, one is allowed to do so. And what we learned yesterday is a very important machlokes between Rav Ila and Rava as to why did they make that takana. Rav Ila holds that this gezeira was made because of chatzitza. Because indeed, even though obviously, again, we're speaking about a case that to your knowledge, the inner keli is not stuck to, it's not adhered to, it's not interrupting, it's not interposing any of the mayim of the mikvah to touch all of the parts of both of the kelim. But it could be that the inner keli will be very heavy, and unbeknownst to the owner, it might weigh down on it. In that case, there's going to be a interposition, a chatzitza. So the chachamim, for kachim, giving it a higher standard, they made a gezeira, they made an enactment. You never may immerse one keli inside the other. That was Rabbi Ila. Rava disagrees with that approach. Rava understands that the reason why for kachim you may not be toivel a inner keli inside an outer keli is because since you have sometimes small kelim, the example Rava gave was needles, was mechatin, or was other types of very small utensils that are easily lost when you take them to the mikvah. And therefore, it's possible that the outer keli will have a very narrow opening, very narrow. And as we learned this rule, that when do we say that the waters that are inside a utensil are still considered mikvah waters if the opening to that utensil has the size of the typical spout on those types of noidois as they had in the times of Chazal. This is called keshifoi feres hanoid. And as we learned on top of Daf Chav Beis, any opening into which you can insert two fingers, your index and middle finger, and comfortably move or turn them around, that size or larger will effectively say that there is a hashaka, that there is a connection between the waters inside the keli and the mikvah waters. And in such a case, the kelim in the utensil are considered to be toiveled in the mikvah. But if you will use a keli whose opening is so little that it doesn't have this shiur of kishifay feres hanoid, then we're going to say that the waters inside the keli are not mei mikvah. They're bona fide mei she'uvim. They're gathered waters in a vessel. The mechatin, the tzinoidos, or any other keli that's inside the outer one is not toiveled. Now, again, if you were to do that, it's never a good tefillah. Chachamim made a takana that even when the opening has the size, still you may not use it. These are the two approaches that we have between Rav Ila and between Rava. What we will learn, and Lamai Nafkamina, this is important just to review the daf until now. Lamai Naf, big Nafkamina. The Gemara takes it as a given that there are certain types of baskets or strainers that never have a narrow opening. Many times we say loy plug, sometimes we don't. If l'rava, the only reason why they made the takana, it's not because of a chashash of chatzitza, but it's because maybe the opening of the kelim will be narrow. According to Rava, kelim that never have a narrow opening could be used. You can put a keli betoich, this strainer, you can put a keli that's tamei inside this basket and toivel them even for kachim. That was an nafkamina. And by the way, what we didn't speak out, just to speak out right now, that the first Tosfos gives another big nafkamina. And enachanami, what's the big nafkamina? Think about it. If the issue is a chatzitza issue, when there is a chatzitza, does that only pose a problem for the inner keli, or does that also pose a problem for the outer keli? In other words, if I have two utensils, the outer and the inner, if the inner one is stuck to the inside of the outer, so there the problem isn't only that the waters of the mikvah are not touching the inner keli, they're not touching the inner surface of the outer keli. So now let's go back. So according to Rabbi Elyahu, if the issue is because of chatzitza, then this takana would mean that the tefillah is not effective, not even for the outer one, not even for the outer one. That's what Tosfos speaks out. Masha'en kein l'rava, but chevra, on this line we're gonna take up right now, and we're gonna make a very important qualification that when do we say that if the opening of the outer keli is not as wide as keshifay feres hanoid, then whatever is inside that keli is not in the main mikvah. There is no hashaka. It's inside a keli. That's only if the outer keli is already tahor, and the only purpose of tefillah is for the inner keli. If the outer keli is also tamei, so let me ask you a simple question. What do I do if I have a keli that's tamei, but the opening is like a bottle today, very little, a Coke bottle? It's not as big as Kishir Feferes Hanot. So let me ask you a question. For the waters to effectively, there's only one keli, only the Coke bottle. If it's a glass Coke bottle and you want to koivel it. Now the waters have to touch not only the outer part of the keli. Every time you take something to the mikvah, the waters have to touch the inner part of the keli. I got myself a problem. When the waters go inside the Coke bottle, why is it mei mikvah? But we don't say that. We say that when you're toiveling one keli, if that keli is tamei, that's pshat tefillah. Nowhere does it say that if the opening of a utensil is that little, you can never toivel it. So if the outer keli is tamei, which would mean that the waters inside the outer keli are still considered mei mikvah, here we have a hilchas taras migu that it works for the outer keli, it works for the inner keli. That will be a gavaldika opening of today's daf. But the main bulk of what we will learn today is going to be, we're going to get an insight to how do we approach the person and the kelim of the Am Ha'aretz, or in the plural, the Amei Haratzim. And what's going to be foundational is, as we'll see, today's daf is so good to get the picture of how we interacted with the Am Ha'aretz. We never suspected the Am Ha'aretz to lie. That was not the issue. We are afraid that the Am Ha'aretz is not knowledgeable enough and is a bit lax in Hilchas Tumah and Tara. But not blatantly lying. And as we will see, that Chazal made a general takana, that all of the kelim of Am Ha'aretz already have a rabbinic standard of Tumah. But to resolve that Tumah, all you need to do is, for example, take it to the mikvah. That's it. We don't suspect that the kelim of the Am Ha'aretz have corpse tumah. For that, the Am Ha'aretz will resolve. And we're gonna travel today. We're gonna have a very clear understanding after everything, a lot of back and forth, how we view the Am Ha'aretz. A few details that we will learn is, we're gonna chazer. We had this in Psachim also. How do we view a klei cheres? An earthenware utensil is unique on many levels. Koydem kol, first of all, if it becomes tamei, you cannot take it to the mikvah. It's not resolved through mikvah. No, Chazal say that breaking it is the only way you solve it. Because when you break it, it's no longer a utensil. But mikvah doesn't work. On the other hand, a earthenware utensil does not contract tumah if the source of tumah touched it halachically only from the outside. So imagine if this is a earthenware utensil, and if it's tightly covered, summit puzzle, you can have a corpse touching it, or it touching a corpse. If the corpse is touching things, then maybe it's not such a corpse. It won't become tamei at all. But how do we view the klei cheres of Am Ha'aretz? Why might that be different? Because what klei cheres, since it only becomes tamei from its inner space, protects everything inside it, only if the klei cheres itself is tahor. The moment the klei cheres itself is tamei, it no longer protects anything that's inside of it. As we're going to go through many details, and we're going to all bring it all back to the Am Ha'aretz. We're going to be questioning whether we can borrow utensils from the Am Ha'aretz, and we'll see we could. We have to toivel it only once. You don't have to wait 7 days, because there is a certain amount of trustworthiness. We trust the Am Ha'aretz when he says he toiveled himself. However, some details of that we won't trust him. And all of this back and forth will be to come, at least, let's cover at least the first of the 11. And don't forget, Chavre, that this Gezerah, that you can't toivel a keli, but keli is only for kachim, not for truma. Why not for truma? Now, I know you can answer, well, that's the whole point. You know, we learned about the 5 levels, chulin. Let's go with the chachamim, maisa sheni, truma, kachim, mechatos. So since each one is more susceptible to Tumah, so you can generally say, so when the Chazal made takanas, they made it only for the ones that are on a higher level. The Gemara is not happy with that. The Gemara wants to find out specifically, why did we make this separation between Truma and Kachim? And all of that, as we'll see, will shed light how we view the Amma Aretz. That's more or less a very important it's a very important daf in the dinam of Kachim, in the dinam of Taras, I'm sorry. And Chavra, we left off on 16 lines from the top of the Amid, on daf Chav Beis, all the way at the end of the line. But there was also the little gimel over here of the Ein Mishpat Nein Mitzvah. So again, we're speaking, coming back, that there is an outer keli and an inner keli. And we made as a statement that if the outer keli's opening is smaller than the kishifay feres hanoid, then the inner keli, not only by kodesh, for nothing, even for chulin, it's not valid because the waters inside the keli are not considered mikvah waters, either touching, but for that touching or for that kissing to be called hashaka, that's only if the hole has that size or larger. Says the Gemara, v'hani mili, when do we say that the inner kelim are not tahar because the opening was not the size of kishufei feres hanoi? That's only if the outer keli is tahar, b'chli tahar. Taka, because then we consider the waters inside the vessel not mikvah waters. Avol b'klei tamei, meaning if the outer keli is tamei, this is gavaldik, migu. So many of us who went to yeshiva were familiar with migu. Never did you hear migu unless you learned these sugyas of taras applied in a whole different way, but it's the same logic. It's since the solka tefilla lekule gufei damana, since if you have one keli that's tamei and you toivel it, even though the opening is little, that means the waters that have to touch all of the surface, the waters of a mikvah don't only have to touch the outer surface of a keli. When you toivel today in a mikvah, the waters of the mikvah also have to touch all of the surface of the inner part of the keli. And the outer keli for sure will become purified. In that case, the waters inside the outer keli are considered mikvah waters. So migu, it's considered mikvah waters for the outer keli. It makes a lot of sense. Indeed, the Tanach, as we learned in the Mishnah, in mikvahs, that kelim, shemilam kelim, if you filled kelim with other kelim, and vihit bilan. Now, guys, this is for truma or for chulin, just to make it clear. Let's not negate. We learned in our Mishnah that even when me'iked adin, you can toivel a keli, b'toich keli, for kachim, it's never going to be good. Never going to be good. Maybe l'rava, when we said when it's a basket. So this Mishnah is speaking about, truma or chulin, or ma'aseh sheni. And you toiveled, so the Mishnah says, harei elu tohaidim. Again, even for truma. There was no gezerah for truma. However, v'im loy taval, now you know how the Gemara is going to learn these lines? V'im loy taval means if you don't need to toivel the outer keli. If you don't need to toivel the outer keli. Because it's tahar. So then, the waters inside the outer keli are mixed waters. What's that mixed waters? Well, it's water in a keli, but it's touching the waters of the mikvah. That's the way we learn it. So what do we say? When do we say that mixed waters will have the status of full mikvah waters and not of mei she'uvim, it's going to be good if they are mingling, really if they're kissing or just touching, because the opening of the outer keli has the size of kishuf feres hanod. I just read the Mishnah the way the Gemara says right now. In other words, Maiko Amar, when you read the Mishnah without this background knowledge, you see, you can read a Mishnah, you mamish don't understand what you're reading. What's the meaning of the im loy taval? The way we said, if you don't have to tavel the outer keli, because it's already taught. The meaning of mayim ha'me'oiravim means the outer keli is taught. So the waters in the outer keli are mayim she'uvim. Why would they be good theoretically? Because they are mingling with the mikvah waters. So when is that considered halachically okay? Exactly as we learned.
So it comes with a bottle in the bowl there's already water and it's trying to fill it.
Or Shlem, I'll add more. Even if I come with a bottle and the bottle is empty. Let's go to Truma. Let's go to my case. You have a needle. You're a kohen. No, if the needle is tamei, let's not forget that, and your needle touches your truma in your house, it's going to invalidate the truma. You want to keep as a kohen, you want to keep everything in your house tar. Anida used that to sew. Simple. Anida is a av. The needle is a rishon. You understand? The needle touches chulin and makes it a sheni. The chulin will touch your truma. So you have to toivel it. You don't want to lose the needle. So you put it in that bottle. He has a little water bottle. That's a great example. That's exactly what we're talking about. It will never be good. Not because of there's no gzeira for truma. Because the opening of the bottle that you have over here, this is a small water bottle, is not kishifay ferasanoid. But if the outer keli is tamei, that's the chiddush. Since the waters are effective to toivel the outer keli, so we have to view the waters inside the outer keli as mikvah waters. Question is how, but it has to be there. If not, you would never be allowed to toivel a keli that doesn't have an opening. So we say mikvah.
Can't you use the application, the idea that like in a wall for sukkah, you can extend it up higher? We talked about this before with mikvah waters. You can extend it up higher if someone's standing outside of the mikvah. Why can't this apply here? The water's extending to all the bottle.
Because the water doesn't go that way. No, we got to learn a lot. We don't say that. It has to mingle, it has to touch, and it's called hashaka. Really, today when you build a mikvah, you use hashaka, which is what we're talking about, which is non-kosher waters kissing kosher waters through an opening of kishefeferes anoid. There's something called zriya. There's something called hamshacha, but let's leave it for another time. Now, says the Gemara, the machloikes of Rava and Avila, and as we said, we quickly reviewed, what will be the nafkamina between Rava and Avila? The nafkamina will be if you are toiveling kalim inside a basket or a strainer or utensils that always have a very, very large opening. A strainer like doesn't even have a mouth, it's just a strainer. So, and we are saying that according to Rava, even for kachim, it's going to be kosher. According to Ravila, for kachim, it's part of the gzeira. Really, this is a machlokes tanoim. The tanyon sal a certain type of basket. They got gusnei and this typical strainer that was used in the making of wine. Again, the point is that we don't say loy plukir. These are kalim that never have a narrow opening. Shemilam, kalim, vihit bilam, you fill them up with other smaller utensils that are tamei, and you toivel them. Look at the Mishnah. Bein l'kodesh. Even if you're toiveling them for kachim, certainly for truma, they are tohoiden. So people are going to ask, what about Chagiga daf chaf amid beis? So the answer is, Chagiga daf chaf amid beis, that says you cannot toivel a keli in a keli. That's only a normal keli. If the outer keli is these two types, then you could. But abashol, and that will be Rav Ilah, letruma, avaloi lekodesh, nekodim. Guys, from here until the end, at least until almost the end, if we'll get there, I'll be happy. If we got further, even better. Maybe we'll go into the second and in the Mishnah. Again, all of these 11, focusing now on the first, Keli b'toich Keli is not good for Kodesh, yes, for Truma. Why didn't Chazal also make this rabbinic enactment for Truma? The simple answer will be, well, that's the whole point. There's different levels, and sometimes you make Chomeres only for that which is more sensitive. The Gemara is not happy with that. So let's go. The Gemara, Iyachi Truma Nami. Iyachi means, guys, Bein l'Ravila, Bein l'Rava. Maybe there's going to be a Chatzitza. And maybe there won't be the opening kisher ferasan. These chashashes are always there. Now, normally you rely on the owner, but we got maybe he didn't know this detail. So why are we not afraid when it comes to truma? So the Gemara says like this: Laman ka'amrinan. Who is the Mishnah talking to? So guys, again, the beginning, don't think that the Amoritz doesn't care at all. God forbid, that wasn't the case. The Amoritz in the times of the Tanoim were not people that were not observant. Chas v'sholom. They were people that were a bit lax, and they didn't know all of the details of the laws. So these, now, what we are learning right now are details. These takonas. You can't toivel a keli b'toich keli. To whom are you talking to? You're talking to chaverim. You're not talking to an Amoritz. In other words, an Amoritz these were the types of details that they never accepted. They never had interest in knowing. So you're talking to a chaver. So what? A chaver would be mindful. Did the inner keli weigh down? Was there a chatzitza or not? Was the outer keli with a hole large enough, or was it too little? A chaver knows about that. There's nothing to be concerned about. So the Gemara says, hold on. Who are you talking to? Well, a chaver will also know. So the Gemara says, you're right. The chaver will know. But if I'll allow the chaver, the learned, the one who knows all the details, to toivel for kachim, keli b'toich keli, he'll know what he's doing. But the observer, the Ama'aretz, might not. The Ama'aretz will see, the big chaver, the one who's so charedi, the one who's so frum, is toivel in keli b'toich keli. I'm also going to do it. What the Ama'aretz will not know is that the chaver's outer keli had a large opening. His has a little one. The chaver's inner kelim were not heavy. His are heavy. The Ama'aretz will observe how the chaver toivels for kodesh, and he will also toivel kelim that the Ama'aretz will use for kodesh. Come back to the problem. So so the Gemara says that's not. We are not concerned, because if the tefillah of the Ama'aretz is only for truma. Now, guys, this is important. The Ama'aretz never accepted for himself these milas because he never found out about them. Problem is that he might do something and then he'll give the food to a kohen if it's truma. Kohanim never took their food nor kalim for truma from an Ama'aretz. Loy mekablinon minayu. We don't accept truma from an Ama'aretz. Now, Rashi adds a very important nuance. Guys, Mashiach is coming. We have to remember this. This is not a hard and fast rule. Actually, Chazal will learn that during the pressing season, whether it's the wine pressing season, wine, the oil pressing season for the oil, we, the Amaratzim were more careful, or they had a good mashgiach because they wanted to sell product not only to Amaratzim, they wanted everyone to be able to buy it. So there are times, Rashi reminds us, it's called B'shas Hagitois, or B'shas Habadim. It's during the olive pressing season, during the wine pressing season, that everyone toivel their kalim. Everyone, even the chaverim, you think everything is toivel it anyways, and that resolved, and we accept it from everyone. Our Gemara, and by the way, and during those times, we would accept wine or oil, which is truma, from an Ama'aretz. The statement that we're learning right now is not during the pressing season. Generally, we didn't accept it. Now, by the way, if an Ama'aretz was giving truma and the chaver didn't take it, he wasn't stuck, because what would he do? He would give it to a kohen who's also an Ama'aretz. Wouldn't create a problem. So if the chaver will know Rava and Avila, he'll never make a mistake. The problem is that the Ama'aretz will observe someone toiveling a keli b'toich keli. So here we say like this: when it comes to kachim, as we'll see in a moment, there's only one Beis Hamikdash, and whoever received kachim, everyone was chaverim in the Beis Hamikdash. What are you going to say? You're never going to receive kachim from the Ama'aretz? That's going to create animosity. You're not allowed to do that. Certain takanas were not made not because there wasn't a chashash, but because you can't do that. You have to be careful. If you know there's a problem, then if you don't know, just to be machmer, if that's the counter is, if you're going to make them feel like they're not part of the Jewish people, we're never allowed to do that. By the way, I'm going to say just once that there are other takanas that logically should have been imposed on Amaratzim, but it's called takanas hashuk. Takanas hashuk means it would hurt the economy. Even for that, sometimes they didn't make an enactment. I'll give you just one example. A Ama'aretz is tamei by rabbinic law. His kelim are tamei, but that which he moves is not tamei. Because if that would be the case, then maybe he's a zav, and then everything becomes tamei for 7 days. Like they limited their takanas. Coming back over here, there's something called the eva animosity. So when it comes to truma, we don't accept it from them. Let's go back inside the Gemara. So why should we accept kodesh? Guys, we're not asking this question to avoid making this takana. We're not afraid of this takana. But b'chlal, if Amaratzim are not that aware of all these dinim, then you always should be chayish that, maybe unbeknownst to the Ama'aretz, the kachim. I'm speaking about a case where he shechted a carbon shlamim, and he's going to give to the kohen the chazeh and the shoik. I'm just giving you one example. So why don't we make a takana? Don't accept it from him, because maybe he was tamei, or he was taught his kalim were tamei. I'm going back to today in Golos, eating in someone else's house. That's mamish. That's the similarities that I see. No one suspects that someone will the dafka. No, everyone has got fearing. The reason why, sometimes we have to think, can I eat in someone else's house, or whether you can eat in my house, is not because of Yirah Shamayim. That same thing, because people don't know. And since they don't know, they're more lax. That hechsher must be good. Looks like a good symbol. That type of laxity. Okay. So kachim, we can never not accept from them, because Havalei Eva, we will create animosity. So now the question is, Trumanami Havalei Eva? How are we allowed to tell a chaver kohen, don't accept truma? You know the feeling? Imagine I'm a yid. I don't know enough. And from the goodness of my heart, I give truma to a kohen. It's very insulting. What is he going to say? From you, I don't take. But he has to do that with the most tact possible, because at least the donor will have someone else to give it to. That's the advantage. Lo yichpasle, it won't bother him as much, because the azal yavle l'koyin ama aretz chavrei. This is very important. Now, where else do we find that even when at times there is a reason to make an enactment, but we don't do it? Guys, the enactment that they made was don't toiv l'kele b'torkele. But what they didn't do is say don't accept kachim, because it's going to create animosity. The Gemara says that we have befedish in other places. Here we're quoting a Mishnah. I'm sorry, Abraisa and Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yosi, he the Tanya, Amar Rabbi Yosi. Now, guys, we just quoted the Rashi that says that wine and oil may only be received from the Amaretz only during the season of pressing. So when you're reading this Braisa, don't jump out of your seat. No. This Braisa is speaking about kachim. Whenever a Amaretz, even an Amaretz, is going to donate to the Beis Hamikdash, whether it is yayin and shemen, not only during the pressing season. During the pressing season, everyone toiveled all of their kelim again. So everything is good. But when it comes for karbanos, they never said not to accept it. Why not? Same chashash. It's not during the season of the pressing. Everyone didn't re-toivel the kelim just to be sure. Maybe unbeknownst to him, it says Rabbi Yosi, you're gonna cause a building of another bama. There's only one mizbeach. If you won't accept it from the Amaretz, then he might build another bama. Another detail, and that is when it comes to kelim that are going to be used in the service of the burning and preparing of the ashes of the red heifer. And we're saying that mechatos is the most susceptible to tumah. If an Amaretz would offer something, we would accept it from him. The soyer of paraduma, because if we wouldn't accept it from him, he'll make his own paraduma. Oh, guys, if the Amaretz would be someone that doesn't care about halacha, see, there's a balance here. We wouldn't be allowed to say it. Let the chips fall where they may, we would say. But that's the point. And again, this will become very clear. This is such a good daf for this. In other words, the Amaretz was God-fearing. He didn't keep it with all the details. He became lax. He didn't know the nuance. So because of that, even though he might not know the nuance, but no, let's rely on what he's saying.
If you call a spade, it's a spade. So aren't you changing the definition here? What is really? I'm not changing anything. We're learning this Gemara and getting a clarity how to view the Amaretz, how they view the Amaretz, and every enactment has a flip side, and how you have to take the flip side or the collateral damage into account. Again, if something is treif, if we would know that his wine is tamei, how can you take it to the Beis Hamikdash? The point is the Amaretz is saying it's tahar. And the Amaretz did generally keep the general concept, as we'll see. So do you have to be chayish? Maybe he didn't know. That's the question. That's already a gray area. And here Chazal, with their Ruach HaKodesh and with their wisdom, they set their line correctly. And we have to adjust our minds to the minds of Chazal. Now let's go weiter. Omar Rav Papa, come on, why is it that nowadays
Nowadays, Rav Papa is already in the times of Golos. Not everyone is keeping the laws of Tum and Tara. We don't have the ashes of the red heifer, but he's applying it to testimony in general. When you have a Beis Din, is there any a time, this Jew is an Am Haaretz, don't accept testimony? We never say that. Why don't we say that? Huh?
Why are we looking for Eidei Kiddushin?
Oh, so 1 second. So Shlem is asking a question. When it comes to Eidei Kiddushin, you need to have someone that's fully observant. That's completely different. Because there's Eidei Birur and there's Eidei Kiyum, just to make that clear. Eidei Birur means witnesses are clarifying what happened. We trust the Am Haaretz. First, the only thing is that since that person is not meticulous in certain areas, he might not have noticed the detail. Maybe. So for that, we say, because if we won't accept the testimony of Am Haaretz, you know what the Am Haaretzim will do? They're going to make a parallel judicial system. We don't want to have two judicial systems. Masha'ink, when it comes to Eidei Kiddushin, we're having Eidim not because we want to know what happened. If a man gives a woman a ring and no one denies it, he says it, she says it, they're not married if it was not done in front of two Eidim. The two Eidim have a whole different type of function. It's called Eidei make. And there we can upgrade it. They're not going to make another judicial system. Even though that when a person was not accepted to be Eid Kiddushin, he got very, very, very offended. Okay, let's go back. Now we got another problem. What's the other problem? Now that you're saying that when it comes to Truma, we allow the Am Haaretz to toivel keli b'torch keli. We allow everyone, which means that he will also toivel keli b'torch keli. Why is it that we are allowed to borrow kalim from the Am Haaretzim and Ariel? We are allowed to borrow utensils from Am Haaretzim. Never was. Now, when you borrow the keli, as it will become clear, this back and forth is so good. You have to toivel it. Anything that you take from Am Haaretz, you have to take to the mikvah, but one thing, you only have to take it to the mikvah and you can use it right away. Because the rabbinic tumah da Am Haaretz is resolved with mikvah. If I were to be afraid that, let's say, there was corpse tumah, then taking it to the mikvah is not the way you go about it. You have to have a whole 7 days, and on the third day, you have to sprinkle on the kelim, the mechatos, and on the 7th day, and take it to the mikvah. Now, if an Am Haaretz is going to lend to me a keli, I'm allowed to accept it. We'll prove I'm allowed to borrow kelim. Even though I'll take it to the mikvah immediately, I don't have to suspect that it has corpse tumah. Why not? Simple question. Maybe the Am Haaretz, again, he's observant. He had a keli that became tummy with corpse tumah, and he put this inside a bigger keli. And the bigger keli had a small opening. That detail he doesn't know. He thinks the inner keli is taught. No, forget about the fact that truma he can give to another person. But if you are not enacting it for truma, why are we not afraid that when we borrow kelim from Am Haaretzim, which we are allowed to do, unbeknownst to the Am Haaretz, the keli which he thinks was toivled, but he toiveled it with Trech Keli where there was a chatzitza. He didn't know that detail. Or he toiveled it when there wasn't Kishay Feferes Hanoid. Now, who says you are Bachal allowed to borrow? So we're going to learn a very elaborate Mishnah in Eiduyos. I know we're going slow, but we're good. This is such a good Gemara. The Tran, we learned the Mishnah like this. Klei Cheres Matzal Ala Koil. Chavra, the final big halacha today that we are reviewing. So Klei Cheres, we said a little bit in the intro. This is Rashi here, 3 lines before the bottom. Number 1. Forget about Am Haaretzim Chaverim. If there is a mace, for those of us who are learning Rambam, we're learning it now, Adar Rishon, at the end of Adar Rishon, Tavshan Pei Beis, that's mamash what we're learning in the Pei Echet Rambam. You have a mace in this room. Everything that's under the same roof becomes contaminated through Tumas oil, with one exception. If there is any earthenware utensil that's tahor, that is completely sealed, it and anything in it will not become tummy. Because since Klei Cheres can only acquire tumah from inside of it, not only if something touched the inner wall, even if something just entered its inner airspace, but it has to go inside. If it's summit puzzle, that's a pasuk in Chumash and Chuk. If it's sealed, so then it doesn't become tummy. That's one din. There's another din. What's the other din? Let me ask you a question. Let's say there's a 2-story building and there's a mace on ground level. Okay, every people, kalim, adam, kalim, oichlan, mashkin, are tummy. They become an av, oil mace. What about the people that live in the upper story? So if you have in the ceiling or in the floor An opening in the size of a tefach by a tefach, that's the dinner we're learning now in Rambam. That's considered a proper opening, a skylight, not to the heavens, to the upper floor. Then the tumah from downstairs goes upstairs, and everything under the roof of upstairs also becomes tummy. Now, how do you prevent that from going up? You have to seal the opening. What may you use as an option? Take a earthenware utensil, but don't stick its mouth facing downstairs. You know why? Because if you stick its mouth facing downstairs, then the tumah goes into the keli, because the tumah goes into the, once a klei cheres itself becomes tamei, it no longer protects anything else from becoming tamei. But if you put the earthenware utensil where only the outside of it is facing downstairs, then it's matzil, it saves everything upstairs. That's the first line. So nachamo, klei cheres matzil ala koil. These are the words of Beis Hillel.
Even if the earthenware vessel wasn't sealed?
If it wasn't sealed.
The airspace inside
No, because if the earthenware utensil is completely clogging up the hole.
No, not in the hole. I mean, initially, just in the room.
In the room, if it's not sealed, it becomes tummy because the tumah goes inside of it. Doesn't matter which way it's facing. But if it's sealed, or in the second case where you have two stories, if the earthenware fully stopped up that opening, that window, that skylight. So if the outside of the keli is that which is seen downstairs, then it saves everything upstairs. However,
what's the minimum size of opening for tumah to go up?
1 handbreadth by 1 handbreadth, tefach by tefach keli.
Right.
Okay, now comes along Beis Hillel. Now, what is Beis Hillel talking about? No matter who owns the keli, even an Amaretz, comes along Beis Shammai and they say, no. That midrabanan. That when you have this earthen, I'm going to focus on the second case, even though it's all the same. So you have this utensil that's stopping up the hole. What klei cheres is effective? A keli cheres that itself is not tummy. If it's tummy, anything which is itself tummy doesn't stop the tumah from going through it. So he says, I will allow, when it comes to items that if they become tummy can never be toiveled. What items can never be toiveled? Food, liquids. I know there is an exception, water. I'm not going to go there right now. Aside of that one exception, once food is tummy, it's always going to remain tummy. Earthenware utensils, once they become tummy, they always remain tummy. So that which is on the second story, which if it's going to have a status of tumah, is kaput, then we say it's good enough. However, all other things, people, non-earthenware utensils, rabbinically become tummy. So Amle Mehisil Beis Shammai, why? Mipnema. So Beis Shammai clarifies that my stringency is only by Amaratzim. So Beis Shammai responds, Amr Beis Shammai, Mipnei, because Shahu, what's Shahu Chevra? The klei cheres. Guys, we're learning about a earthen, because that klei cheres itself is tamei al gav amaretz. Simply by the rabbinic decree that utensils of a amaretz is tamei, and the ain klei tamei choitzitz. So Beis Hillel says, so be consistent. If you're telling me that the rabbis enacted that all of the utensils of amaretz is tamei, including a klei cheres, so why is it effective for food and drink? Why? So Amar lahem Beis Shammai that even when we said that food and drink that's in the first case, there's a klei cheres, it's summit, it's sealed, it's in the room of a mace. So whatever is food and drink is not tamei dafchav beis amud beis. That's only la'atzmoi tiharnu. That's only for the am haaretz, because chevra a chaver would never take food and drink from the am haaretz. Like we said, we are always afraid that everything that the am haaretz touches, including his food and drink, unbeknownst to the am haaretz, is tamei. Now, guys, if we're speaking about chulin, people that would eat chulin b'tumah have no problem, but then there's no problem. We're speaking about people that had this higher standard, and that's why they were called perushim. They kept away from the amaratzim. So who are you talking about? To the amaretz himself? Let him eat it. Let him eat it. He doesn't care, and it doesn't matter But kalim, so why do we care about the kalim? Because he lends kalim to us. Here you see, that's the whole Mishnah was just a raya that we are allowed to borrow kalim from the Ha'aretz, even though we have to take it to the mikveh. But again, we only took it to the mikveh right away, and we considered it tahar, because we removed the rabbinic tum of the Amaratza. But if there's a chashash that it's tamei from mace, then you got a real problem. Oh, I'm just explaining the question. But should we allow the non-earthenware kalim, that a chaver might borrow? Now let me ask you a question. So what did they say? They said that what? That it doesn't remove the tumah. But I have a question. So why didn't they also say that the earthenware kalim are also tamei? That has to be answered. The Gemara is going to answer in a moment. You understand the issue? No, it's food and drink we never took from them. But kalim, if we can borrow kalim.
But why can't we use the same kula when they go to the market also?
Wait.
And apply it there.
Wait, let's finish learning. This is we're going slow and we'll get it. So first of all, Beis Shammai is being machmir to a point. Says the Gemara, we learned, Amar Rabbi Yeshua, I'm ashamed of you, Beis Shammai. Rabbi Yeshua lived many years after Shammai, but he found that opinion to be so inconsistent. So Yakir, you're good. It doesn't make sense. No, it's mimanavshach, basically. Either make a takana that the Amaratzim, because of their not knowledge, everything is tamei, or don't make a takana. I'm ashamed. And he said, and he pointed out the inconsistency. After is it possible that Isha Lasha Ba'areva, that there's a woman kneading in a trough, she's knitting in a keli that's not earthenware. I want to give the case. The case is the second case that we mentioned on Amud Aleph. There was a mace downstairs. There was a skylight. The skylight was stopped closed with an earthenware utensils from the Ha'aretz. Beis Shammai is saying that the tumah goes upstairs. It's metama what? Oichlin, mashkin, and not earthenware utensils. It's metame. No. The opposite. That it's metame. Everything except for food and drink and earthenware utensils. So imagine. So there's a woman. She's kneading on an areva that's not earthenware. According to Beis Shammai, the woman will become tamei. From what tumah? From corpse tumah. Big tumah. The areva will become tamei, but the bread won't even be tamei at all. Where do you have such a thing? You don't find.
She's touching it.
We're not going to make it tamei, according to Beis Shammai. That's the whole point. That's illogical. So Isha areva tamei shiva, and the batzek and the dough remains tahar. Or another example, if you have on the upper store, my friends, the loigen. Loigen means a non-earthenware bottle, which can hold a loig amount. A bottle, a keli, according to Beis Shammai, any keli that's not earthenware becomes tamei, but the food remains tahar. Loigin that are already filled with mashkin. So the loigin, because they're not made out of earthenware, tamei tamei shiva, and the mashkin are tahoiden. I'm ashamed of this. Be consistent. Either make exeda that the kelim of the maratzim are tamei. Once you go with that approach, a tamei keli cannot stop the tumah from going further, or not.
But isn't it to that point? I mean, like if someone will touch, I mean, isn't everything what happens in this house to that point when you cover it up, then everything is kosher or tamei? No.
That's but Beis Shammai is not saying that, and Beis Shammai is saying that's the whole point that when we're saying that it doesn't stop the tumah from a person, but it stops the tumah from food. It means even though that person is touching the food, it won't make the food tamei.
Because it's just exera?
Because since all of it is because we don't know that the klicheres is tamei, it's a gzeira on the kelim of the amaratzim that it's tamei, but maybe it's not. If the keli would be tamei, then for sure everything would become tamei. So you know what? Says the Gemara, nitpa loy Talmud echad b'talmidei Beis Shammai. And this is many years after Shammai, but a student engaged Rabbi Yeshua, and he defended Beis Shammai. You know what? It makes a lot of sense. And Amar loy, oymar l'cha taman shel Beis Shammai. I will explain you how it makes a lot of sense. Can I do that? So Rabbi Yeshua says, Amar loy emoy zog. Amar loy. Let's first shiur, let's come to an agreement on certain foundations that no one will debate. Klei tamei, if a keli is tamei, chaytzitz or ain't chaytzitz, does it stop the tumah or does it not stop the tumah? Amalei, it doesn't stop the tumah. Next question. Klei shalama aretz, all of the kelim of amaratzim, midrabanan, are they tamei or tar? So he told him tamei. So now this Talmud tells him, now, by the way, therefore, so far, what should be the din? Everything in the upper story should be tamei. But so says the Talmud to Rabbi Yeshua, v'im ato oimer loy tamei. Let's go back. It's similar to Eva. It's not about the Eva. It's about how much can you enact before the Amaretz completely disregards all these dinim. If you're going to tell him tamei, klu mashgiach olecha, I want to add a very important nuance that the Gemara doesn't speak out. You know what? Something that could be resolved through mikvah is something that he'll be more willing to accept. Even if not for himself, the Amaratzim knew that if he lends a keli, the chaver will take it to the mikvah. But that's only kelim that are able to be purified. The items, which is oichel, mashkin, other than water, and kleicheres, if they are decreed to be tamei, they can never be resolved. That's a big difference. So is he going to listen to you? In other words, basically you're telling him that everything you have is tamei. There is a point where he'll say, everything that I have is tahor, and everything that you have is tamei. And that's the reason for Beis Shammai. How great is that? So what did they do, Chavre? What they did is they said that non-earthenware kelim of Ha'aretz is tamei. Earthenware kelim, not so simple. Well, they didn't say completely tar because it's chaytzitz for oichlin umashkim, but you get the reason for that. So miyad halach Rabbi Yeshua, v'nishtatach al kivrei Beis Shammai. He went and he apologized. And Omar and he says, Na'anesi lochem atzmais Beis Shammai. He says that I spoke too strong against you, Beis Shammai. Umas asumai shalochem kach, that even the cryptic rulings that at first appeared nonsensical, now I get where you're coming from. Miforoshes alachas kama v'kama, and the Gemara says that Rabbi Yeshua felt so bad for his strong. I mean, he said, that's a very strong, I'm ashamed of your words, that he fasted so much until the end of his life that his teeth became black. Amru kol yomov, that for the rest of his life, hush charushinov, the teeth of Rabbi Yeshua became darkened because of the fast days that he did to add to the tshuva because of the words that he felt later were spoken in excess. Now, the point of all this, like this, here you see, I will word it this way. When you make a takana that the other party will accept. And Ha'aretz would not accept that his food and drinks are not taught. Now, we're not going to eat it. But he won't accept it. Don't tell it to him. And Ha'aretz won't accept if you tell him that his kelim that are earthenware are tamei. The Ha'aretz did accept that is non-earthenware kelim, he accepted that. Are tamei. He knew that. Didn't bother him. Because if he would want to have a chaver to come over, you know what he would do? He would take it to the mikvah. If he would lend it to you, you know what you would do? You would take it. Now, this tumah is not tumah of corpse. That we trusted him for. It was this additional tumah. So now, what do we see over here? Tani miyas, it says in this Mishnah Neduyois, lechavaloi, that kelim of Ha'aretz may be borrowed. Now we're go back to the question. Alma flekti gemara, sho'alinan minayu, we are allowed to borrow utensils. Now, if you are telling me, which we are saying, that even for truma, we can toivel a keli b'toich keli, why are we not afraid that the kohen, that the Ha'aretz is going to toivel a keli b'toich keli, but he won't, but there's going to be a problem with it. And then when he's going to lend it to you, you're going to use it. So answers the Gemara, ki sho'alinan minayu. Whenever we borrow a keli, we have to toivel it. Not be linan lahu. But I maybe maybe there was corpse tumah, we would ask him. He would tell us. So that's the point. We trusted him. Was there any corpse tumah? We would know. We trust him. There was no corpse tumah. Elamah, there's a gzeda that all of the non-earthenware kalim of the amaratzim, you have to toivel. Fine, you'll toivel it. So there's no downside. So if that's the case, why doesn't Basil respond to Beishamai that why are you afraid of telling in the case that we're speaking about in the Mishnah where there's a corpse downstairs and there's food upstairs? What are you afraid that he's going to borrow the keli? Anyways, we toivel it. That wouldn't help because when you borrow a keli, you don't always borrow it for 7 days. So that's a much bigger chumrah. So answers the Gemara, Tamei Meis. No. If you're going to say that the keli has Tamei Meis, then Boyazor Gimel V'Zayin. Then you have to sprinkle it on the 3rd day and on the 7th day. Who says he'll even lend it to you for 7 days? In other words, this Tefilla that we are talking about is insufficient for Tumas Meis. But this Tumah is sufficient for the Tumah of the Amaratzim. Very good. So Bekitzer, we decreed, Chavre, one takana. What did we decree? That the earthenware kalim of the Amaretz, it's not that we're saying that it's Tamei. We didn't say that. We said the earthenware kalim of the Amaretz doesn't protect from Tumas Meis. And the Amaretz accepted that. Look how beautiful this is.
Because we gave him a way out.
That's right. If we would tell him we're making a takana that your earthenware kalim are Tamei Nakuda, he would say, so I'm condemned. I'm Tamei, you're Tamei. We never said that your kalim are tamei because there's no solution. But we told the Amaretz that your earthenware, your kalim, don't protect kalim that are solutionable, kalim that could be toivel. We told him that, and he accepted that. And now we can trust him. So there's no problem that he'll toivel a kalim b'toich kalim. We'll ask him. He already knows that if the non-earthenware kalim was only protected because of the earthenware keli, he knows that he knew it's not protected. And he'll toivel it or he'll let you know. So when you borrow it, you're not going to get tripped up. How great is that? Now, hold on. What we did have before, the Tefilla asks the Gemara, Loi mehemne? What did we have above? That we always have to toivel kalim from the Amaretz. Forget about Tumas Meis. We always have to toivel kalim from Amaretz. Non-earthenware kalim are tamei. Why do I have to toivel it? Why don't I ask him, did you toivel it or not? Why can't I ask him that? So that's something that we can't trust him. Why not? We learned, Amaretz is believed, al toharas tfilas tamei meis, to say that there's no corpse tumah, which is what we're saying. So I have a big question. Why are we saying that everything that belongs to Amaretz is tamei? So food and drink we never took. Kalim we can borrow, but you always have to toivel. Why do you have to toivel? Ask him. He's not believed. So here the Braisa says he is believed. So the Gemara differentiates. Amar Abaye, loy kasha. When do we believe the Amaretz for Tumas Meis? That's regarding his person. We believe in Amaretz to say, I toiveled, I'm not tamei b'Tumas Meis. Ha b'Kalov. When it comes to his kalim, we don't trust him. B'chlal. Now the detail that we mentioned, we do trust him. We're speaking about a keli. Maybe it became tamei. The Amaretz didn't know. And even if he says, Shuki, that I toiveled it, we don't trust him because he will think that it's not tamei. You understand? Rabbi says even better. Idi b'Kalov. When do we believe in Amaretz that there is no tumah? The Amar Ma'olam Lohit Balti Keli B'Toich Keli. If he says, I never toiv the Keli B'Toich Keli, I never did that, we believe him. And then Taka, we're not concerned for Tumas Meis. Ha the Amarit Balti Avolit Balti Keli B'Keli She'ein B'Fivke She'Feres Hanoid. But if he says that no, there was a Keli that had Tumei Meis, and I toiveled it, but I made sure I did it right. That detail, he was never meticulous for himself. They were not meticulous in that detail. Once a person is not meticulous in a certain detail, you cannot trust him. It's like today a person says, I don't eat, I'm just giving you an example. I eat chalav stam, but when you'll come, I'll only serve chalav Yisrael. There's a problem with that. Because if a person in their standards are not up to a certain level, Even if they're saying, I know about the standard, for you, I'll do the standard, not on purpose, by accident, they might have got, they might not have kept it. Okay. And the Hatanya, this is a raya, that Neman Ama'aretz Limit and Ama'aretz is believed to say, Peiros lo yuchshav. We believe him if he says that these fruits never became wet. We believe him. Avol, but if he says that Peiros yuchshav, avoloi nitma'u, that we don't believe him. That we don't believe him. That's a nuance, because he, for himself, didn't care to eat food betuma. He didn't care about that.
Even if our told you that he did toggle it, wouldn't we still be choshish that between the time that we told it and when you're borrowing it?
I want to answer that question. So what, very important. When Ama'aretz says that he toiveled it, all right, what we believe him for in certain nuances, it's not Tommy Tumas Mace. But Stam, you got to take it to the mikveh. But then you can use it right away. Tumas Mace, he was much more careful. And now we resolved why there is no downside to toivel keli, but keli l'truma, even if the Ama'aretz will see that there was a certain amount of nemanus that he has, so we're not concerned of something going negative. What we did say above, the first answer, that you can ask an Ama'aretz, are you Tameh? And if he says, no, I'm not Tameh with corpse tuma, I went to the mikvah, we believe him. Is that true? Think about this. The sprinkling of the ashes of the red heifer, which is part of the process of becoming tahor from tumas mace, is that you can't sprinkle the ashes on the first day of contact with the mace. You have to count 3 days. Now that includes the day you became tamei. That includes the first of the two twice, but you have to be on day number 3. So if a person comes to the custodian of the smeichatos, please sprinkle it on me. The Braisa says it depends who comes to you. If a chavar comes to you, you can sprinkle on him immediately. You can trust him when he says that he's already up to his 3rd day. Mazan olav miyad. But if a Ama'aretz comes to you, Shabbalah hazois, ain't mazan olav. You have to tell him, wait, stay with me. And today is a Monday. So maybe he only became Tamei Monday, Tuesday. On Wednesday, you sprinkle. So you don't trust him on this detail. So the Gemara says, again, this detail not, but the general, yeah. And Amar Abaya, the moment an Ama'aretz experiences that when he comes to you to get tefillah, you don't trust him right away. And you make him stay with you. That inspires him to be more meticulous. Well, this is serious stuff. So once he already sees that he paid the dues of having to wait with you for the 3rd day and then for the 7th day, now he's going to toivel properly. Hey, Kal to Allah of the Soifa. I don't mind stopping over here. This daf is the takeaway of how we have to interact with people that are God-fearing, that know general laws, that don't know specific laws. So we don't say we don't trust them at all. We never say that. We don't make enactments which makes them feel completely excluded. If you make a limited amount of takanas, it worked. It works. You have to know how to apply it nowadays. Like we just said, you tell him that your earthenware kalim are not tamei, but they don't protect non-earthenware kalim. That's the best example. And he'll be makabel that. And he'll take it to the mikveh, or he'll let you know. Yes.
All right, you're saying he came there. He's saying it's the 3rd day, and we're saying the mikveh guy is saying they're saying it's not. You have to stay with us. So you're basically telling him you're lying.
Well,
then you're telling him we trust
David,
you.
Yeah, very good, very good. You're saying you're telling him that since he's not that careful b'chlal by Tumen Tara, then maybe he's confused with his days.
And you don't think that's going to take him out of the circle?
It's not going to take him out of the Jewish community, of the observant community, because you're giving him a solution. I'm not saying it's the most convenient solution for him to wait with you for 3 days. So it's very unlike saying that your earthenware utensils are completely tamei, nukuda, because then he has no solution. And food and drink, just to know, food and drink, anyways, we never took it from them unless we don't care to eat it betuma. And by the way, many Jews, there's nothing wrong halachically for me to eat food betuma. If I'm not a kohen and it's not truma of food, I can eat it betuma. I become rabbinically tamei. So what? Many people were tamei. They only became tar for the Yom Tov. So yeah, you have to weigh all this, and that's something that is very important for our generation. But that's the challenge that we all have. How are you makad of someone without making them feel that they are excluded and without lowering your standards? This is a dance that you have to have. Azad. The Rebbe had Ruach HaKodesh. She knew exactly how to make this dance. To be continued.
Thank you, Rabbi.